Hello, everybody. My name is Alexei Novitsky, and this is Lucius Labs podcast. And today I am with Barbara Weiss Segala. How are you doing today?
Well, thank you, Alexi. How are you?
I'm doing great. Just hanging out and really excited to dive deep and the real mystery person behind the MUPAS study here. Um, so, as you can see, Miss Barbara's name is Segala, and that is Dr. Jim's wife. So, how did you meet Dr. Jim Segala?
It was spring of 1979, and there was a party in the dorm where I was going to the University of Bridgeport in Connecticut. And Jim was not a student at that university, but through mutual friends, you invite people. And that was the night that I met Jim, and we've been together ever since.
That's pretty awesome. I remember speaking about this with you before, and there was like the series of synchronicities that someone led up to this. Do you care to dive in deeper, or do you want to just move forward?
Well, I typically had a friend that would come visit on the weekends, or I would go visit my friend. And it was just one of those crazy things where that it was a Friday night, and I just said to my friend, I'm just going to go to this party in the dorm. It's not a big deal. Why don't we just catch up tomorrow? And that was the night that I met Jim, that Friday night. So, had I not gone to the party, I obviously would not have met him.
Currently, you are the lady behind the scenes
Yes,
of the MUPAS study.
yes.
And you didn't always look into the phenomenon or things of that nature. What type of work were you doing before you started working on this project?
So I've always been in early childhood education. I've spent the last 30 plus years. I started actually in elementary ed and working under a Title I program. And then after filling in one day as a temporary person in a preschool classroom, I never left. And that was in the late 90s. And I went back and I got my certification in early childhood ed. And I just climbed the ladder, found myself getting more and more into administration. And I had the great privilege of having the opportunity to build from scratch for someone a state-of-the-art program where I then had the opportunity to write all the policies and procedures. I've written kindergarten curriculums, two of them for the state of Rhode Island. And that was for the kindergartens to become Department of Ed certified. And these were housed within early learning centers. And after our first granddaughter was born, I knew my heart needed to be that stay at home Grammy for whenever, my son or daughter in law needed me. And I left the center that I loved, but I got into higher education at that point. So in 2012, I became an adjunct professor for a university in Connecticut. And several years ago, a position opened that I didn't even know about, and that was to be the associate program chair of the Early Childhood Education and Child Studies Department. And I was pretty much told I needed to apply. There was no option. And before I knew it, I was the associate program chair. And I was in that role until almost exactly a year ago, where I started seeing that I needed to be working on this full time. But once an educator, always an educator, and I could never give that up. So now I'm an associate faculty member and I teach term by term. It's pretty much at my convenience right now. I have a wonderful opportunity to be able to do that. So it was last October where I really got into being MUPAS full time and learning terminology I've never heard before and learning science and just connecting with people that were just fascinating. And now I spend a good many hours. I can't even tell you how many hours a day I spend either troubleshooting, helping people with a device. If I can't, we have, another source we can send them to. But I found that a lot of my day, I'm just connecting with people who are experiencers, people that need somebody to just have a listening ear, somebody looking for advice, which I let them know I really cannot give them that advice, but I'll always listen to them. And then I'll send them to someone who might be able to be a better listener or give them the advice that they're seeking. Um, I took over everything about the business except the science end and Jim's end. And here I am doing my very first podcast with you.
Well, hopefully it's the first of many to come because you are the secret mind behind this project at this point. And I find that fascinating because you never really studied or researched the phenomenon, right? When you were growing up or and
Never.
so I have a few follow-up questions to this then. What did you think about when Jim first started working on this? And how did you get introduced to the phenomenon? Was it a good introduction? Like, how did that go down?
So everybody's pretty much aware that back in 2011, Jim started working at the Institute in Austin with Hal Puthoff. So that was the first time I ever heard of anything like this. And the first person that ever asked me if I believed that there could even be life elsewhere actually was Hal. And we
Hmm.
had a wonderful conversation. And then I just found that I didn't really believe in a lot of this until I found that I was making from yeast, I was making yogurt that Jim was feeding to these different slides to put under the microscope and looking for ways that communication happens. And that was pretty cool. Okay, here
That is
I
pretty cool. So communicating, so you made the yeast that he then like studied how they communicate with each other.
So I would take care of the yeast, and I read a few books, and I would talk to the yeast, and I would play quiet music, and I would make sure it was nice and warm because I wanted the yeast to grow. Because the more that I learned about this, I started to think, well, how do we communicate? I certainly know how to communicate with a 4-year old. I know how to communicate with a nonverbal child, but life elsewhere, how do you do that? So I started to get a little bit more of an interest, but never really took to any of this until, I don't know, I guess maybe um, visiting Skinwalker Ranch, which was a very positive experience, and meeting the wonderful people that we did at the time, and just learning about the people, the region, the basin itself, and just stories were incredible. And I think that was really my first real introduction to what people experience and what they believe in. And I had never heard of people getting implants or having difficulties with electronics and just all the different things that we continue to hear on a day-to-day basis from people. And I just found that there's just so many interesting people out there that really have a connection to something that I don't. I outright tell people I don't believe I'm an experiencer. Jim thinks that I am to a degree because I've had some crazy, which I shouldn't use the word crazy, but I've had some crazy dreams. Very,
You're saying you're not saying crazy in a bad way. You're saying fantastic.
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
So maybe I have had a connection that I wasn't ever aware of. I don't know. But I think probably, just 4 or 5 years ago was a real eye opener for me. So,
And that was when the MUPAS study first started was, oh no, that was even before that. That was about 7 or 8 years ago.
right. So
I
that
want
was
to I want to circle
2017.
back real quick because I realize that you and I know exactly what we're talking about. We're talking about the MUPAS Phase 2 study.
Yes.
Um, for everyone watching, MUPAS stands for Modular Unidentified Phenomenon Alert System. And
Correct.
basically, it's this device right here
Yes.
that that tracks all the background fluctuations, electromagnetic, acoustic, gyroscopic. I'm trying to think of what else is on it. There's so many different gadgets that go along with it, and basically it's measuring every single wave type. And at the same time, experiencers have an online journal where they're correlating their data. Well, they're not correlating it. They're just uploading their data, and then AI analysis correlates the data. And with this study, they've been able to already come up with certain ideas or certain, you could say, energetic signatures that become common across multiple users. And so we're distributing a system of, well, Barbara's the head here. I am just the lonely ambassador, just helping out as much as I can. Distributing, the goal is 10,000 worldwide, and that will give us a big enough pool in order to publish in a scientific journal.
Yeah.
Um,
So, but the thing is, Alexi, there's a lot of people out there that have a device that are not part of the study. So, prior to being funded by a private individual who is a believer and an experiencer himself, um, we were selling units. And then the study came about. So, people do have an option where they can purchase a MUPAS Mini or the
mhm.
biometric watch outright and not have to write in the journal, not have to participate in the study. So that kind of needs to be clear because there are people that don't want to be part of the study. And
Right.
just to go back to something you said, we are worldwide, we're global. We're in Australia, Ireland, United Kingdom, Portugal, Cayman Islands, Thailand. I know I'm missing people and I don't want to miss people,
Did you
but
say Australia? I think you did.
Australia, we have a lot of users in Australia. Sorry, people,
Yeah.
I think of you first. But we do. We have a lot of activity happening in Australia. And so whatever is happening, it's not just over us. It's not here in the United States. It's everywhere. It is everywhere. Doesn't matter where you are, the stories are the same. We hear from people that are sharing the same experiences.
So there has to be something there. I mean, you have scientific data and you have people's analysis or like journals, right? Their thoughts, their experiences. And so there's clearly something there. What would you say was the turning point? Because you said before that when you were speaking with Hal that you really didn't believe in all of this, or maybe you still don't, I don't know. But was there a certain moment when it turned to where it's like, okay, now I know something is happening. Um,
That's a tough question. Um, I don't know. I think it just became real meeting people that were unlike myself, people that had something common amongst themselves that I didn't share, but listening to them, and not just people in the basin, but other people from all over. So I think that's when it really became real to me. So I don't know if there was ever an exact defining moment of when that happened. I think it was just a slow moving moment that just all of a sudden was like, wow,
Very
just
cool. And I know from my personal experience, a big indicator is somewhat like intuition and allowing like how you're mentioning how you met Jim earlier. You kind of you broke free of your typical routine and you went and did something a little bit different, and it resulted in something that's lasted your lifetime now. From my experience with the phenomenon, the way it kind of works, it kind of influences your intuition and will make you break your routine. What is the most common thing that you have come across during the study? As far as the participants, what is their most like maybe it's broken into a few categories, but what do you think is the most common?
so again, that's a pretty tough question because there's people that um, they believe so much that unfortunately it's caused hardships within their families. Then you've got the person that has such medical problems, and I won't speak any further to that. We strictly abide by all HIPAA laws, and Jim is privy to some of those. But I just know that they exist. I know that there's people that have great experiences and people that don't, people that are a little fearful. It's There isn't one common denominator, Alexi. There's just so many different variables here that I think it's hard to say that there's one group is more significant than another. They're all equally as important, but they
Well,
all have this common belief.
right. But and they wouldn't just have that out of nowhere. I think it definitely comes from real experiences that they're having in their life, and the data is there to back it up. Even I mean that's what's so great about the MUPAS is you can literally watch spikes happen in different fields, and they're correlated to your experiences. Um, I find that super interesting. And so you mentioned before that some people really believe it, right? To the point where it becomes dominating and it somewhat takes over their life and it starts to ruin friendships and relationships. One thing I remember Jim mentioning in the past is that he has a list of counselors and maybe I don't know if they were psychologists or just counselors, but that people that participants that are struggling a little bit too much with this can go speak with as well. So it's not like we're just saying everyone's, you know, can you speak on that real quick?
So we have a connection now with a gentleman who is an experiencer, and he is gotten into counseling, and he is willing to speak to people. Um, we have other people within our own community that a lot of people know, such as yourself, who are always willing to speak to people. Um, Carl the Crusher, um, anybody, any of our what we call ambassadors. So we have an ambassador program where are one of our ambassadors, where you're not just here to promote us to get people into the study. You're here to make connections with other people. You have a group of people that follow Lucius Labs for a reason, and they can come to you and you can tell them about a device. Doesn't mean they have to sign up. It's just somebody to talk to. So I think any of our ambassadors, they're all experiencers. They're open to always speak to anyone. But this one gentleman specifically, um, I would make an introduction if somebody wanted some counseling. Um, he actually is out of the country, but he stays on pretty much New York time so that he can speak to people. We do have somebody in Arkansas, so he's a little bit more local, who is an experiencer, and he is always willing to help and listen, not so much give any type of professional opinions because he's not a licensed counselor. So we have to be careful. Um, but it's important for people to know that they have an outlet. They have other people they can talk to, that they can share experiences with. And although I know you're going to want to ask some questions here, I have to be a little secretive, but shortly um, we're going to be coming out with a whole new outlook to what the portal looks like. And there'll be a chat box where people can openly chat and make connections with others. So I'm not really sure if I was supposed to mention that yet, but it's in the works and it's looking great. So it'll be a little bit more, easier
Yeah,
to
that's great.
follow. Yeah.
So one thing that kind of bugs, and I'm not, and the MUPAS is almost the complete opposite, and that's kind of what I was trying to lead towards because you just spoke about how we're willing to connect people to counselors. There are a lot of people in this industry, and it's not me saying it, it's other people saying this, but I do see what they're talking about. That they could say that the UFO field in general is taking advantage of vulnerable adults, like mentally unstable, vulnerable adults.
Sad.
And I could see how that could be the case because people need something to grab onto. It's almost like how people can get attached to the whole flat Earth thing because they find a community and now they want to be part of it. But
Right.
that's definitely not what we're doing here because we're literally saying "Oh, maybe you should um, see a counselor or something like that, or speak to someone about this so you can have more clarity. Because if you're just living in your mind the whole time, it can be really challenging to tell what's real and what's not, especially if people are going through a state of ontological shock. Um, so I just think that's absolutely fantastic that you are we're able to direct people um, that need company, need people to talk to, you
Yep.
know.
I mean, we have people too of all demographics, and it doesn't matter where you're from. You have a common entity, right? You have this common denominator. I'm not sure really if entity is the correct word,
People
but
might take that the wrong way. They're gonna say, "Wait, we all
exactly.
share an
Maybe
entity?"
we
No,
can
no,
take that
no.
out. But you have something in common. Sometimes you just do need somebody to bounce it off because we've got people that can't talk to people at work about it because they'll lose their job. They can't
Yep,
talk to their spouse or partner because that person's not a believer and doesn't want to hear about it.
yep,
Their children are too young, can't relate to it, but don't understand why mommy or daddy's crying and can't get out of bed in the morning, but mommy or daddy had a bad experience during the night. There has to be um, some place for people to know they have a safe spot, a safe area to be able to talk to someone. In a preschool classroom, we have a cozy area. Okay. You're feeling like you need a little quiet time and you want to just take a book, you go into the quiet, cozy area. You just want to go hold your favorite stuffed animal for a minute, you go to the cozy area. It's safe. Nobody can tell you what happens in that area. Okay. It's calming. People need that. There are people that need that calming effect, and they might not know who else to talk to. So, if we can help lead them to someone that might match their personality or their situation, because of course everybody's situation is a little different, then that's great. They're
it's
not
really
all
interesting because people talk about how they've been, or people always wonder, are these things bad? Have people ever been hurt by these things? And the thing that I've come to notice is that the most pain these things have ever caused in people is them not thinking that they're able to talk to people about this. And so they live a life in seclusion and
Mhm.
they feel different. They feel like an outcast. And so in a way, I think that's the most dangerous thing about being an experiencer is that outcasted feeling that one might have. Because I know like growing up and stuff, you don't talk about this kind of thing.
Right.
Um, but I found it really interesting though, and I believe it was 2017, 2018, all the UFO stuff started coming out, the New York Times and whatnot. And now all of those people that kind of had the, like were a little hesitant to talk about these things are coming to me asking, what do you think about this? And I'm telling them, well, I don't believe in that one at all. That one's nonsense. That's actually kind of legit. And so it's just really interesting because now you have those same people that never even wanted to talk about it seeing a video of a balloon and calling it a UFO, and you're like kind of laughing at them in the background, like, no, you're being fooled. That's just a balloon. It's clickbait. Um, so that's the one thing I really like about the MUPAS is that it's real hard data. Um,
Yes.
it's not anecdotal at all. It's quite literally like really there. It's really being recorded. And I
Yes.
think, yeah.
Yeah, and people can go back 2 weeks to view what happened. So you might have an experience and say, wait a minute, I think I recently just had that. Let me go back a couple days and look at my portal and see what were the readings. So it is real, live, scientific data. It's honest.
Mhm.
And it's nothing that can be made up.
Yeah.
It's what's happening in the environment.
And that's what I've been putting in my journals. It doesn't always have to be about a UAP, but it can also be about just a phenomenal event. And
Mhm.
for me, there's always been like this dream learning space that I kind of wake up in and somewhat live in. And one of my journal entries that I put in there was I just had a dream that I caught a spotted sea trout. And then, was at a certain pier, made one cast, caught a spotted sea trout. Hadn't caught one all season. So I wake up from the dream, drive over there, throw one cast, I catch a spotted sea trout. So that's also like part of the phenomenon is that synchronicity. That's what I was mentioning earlier. The way you met Jim kind of came about some a sort of you broke your original routine. Like I wasn't gonna go fishing that day, but I decided to because I was gonna catch a trout. So it was a good idea. But I wouldn't have known that unless I had that vision or that dream. And so those visions come in all different scales, from catching a sea trout to you're going to meet someone at a place. I've even like ha met people in certain places and locations based off of those dreams. And so I just find it super fascinating that it's not just, and in fact, it's almost not. Well, it kind of is, but it's not. It's not little green men. It's a much bigger thing. It's about human consciousness and awareness and how distortions in the metric, the space-time metric, like the stuff the MUPAS is picking up, um, affect people. And how does that actually work? Because we have our limited state of evolution based off the human body, and it's really hard for us to understand what's happening beyond our perception. Um, and so, like you're saying, like talking to the yeast or playing music to the yeast, do you think that the yeast knew that the music was coming from you, or are they just all of a sudden happy because there's music playing and they don't even really know there's music playing?
I don't know. I have no idea. But since then, I always talk to my plants, right? And
Yep.
they're thriving. They do great. So I don't know. Maybe there is something to it. I don't know, but I don't know the name of the author. And it was one of the first books I read that Jim had me read, and it was when he was in Texas, and it was about an experiment a gentleman did where he had plants that he played, either classical music or jazz, whatever, and he talked to the plants, and then there were plants in another room that he never talked to, and he never played music for. They got the same amount of sunlight, I believe, but the group that heard noise versus the group of plants that didn't thrived, and we have studies like that in psychology with young children. There was a very famous study many years ago with children in an orphanage. There was the group of children that were loved and the group that were kind of neglected, and who thrived, the ones that were given attention. So the yeast, I don't know. I had my routine every day with my yeast.
I
So,
mean, when what you just said even almost circles back to what I was kind of talking about, where I said the most harm that the phenomenon can create is you feel disconnected from your family, maybe your friends. And so you relate that now to the two different types of plants, where one's being spoken to and one's not. So I really do think that's like the most harmful aspect is how there's been so much stigma and so much taboo. And that's why I think the MUPAS study is really a game changer. And the reason I say that is because I'm not sure, are you familiar with the UFO hearing that just happened in Congress a few days ago?
so I have to be very honest and say I did not watch it.
Yeah. I didn't watch it.
I didn't hear anything. I've kind of separated myself a little bit. Just I don't have any real specific reason, but I know I need to. I think I don't know if it's just that I need to do it on my own time. I'm not sure.
Definitely. Definitely. And what I was getting at though is basically like I was saying, like people were really hesitant to talk about this stuff until the New York Times came out with the article, the Go Fast, the I don't even remember them. So I don't really follow those because I consider that like politics and I'm already on board, so I don't really need to be watching that kind of stuff. Um, but the point that I'm getting at is that it now allows other people to open up. It allows them to connect more. The more we reduce the stigma, the more we're actually going to be able to figure out what's going on. And real data is what's really important because a lot of it's just hearsay. This person saw something. Here's a very blurry video. This is actual real data that I think is going to become extremely important in the near future. And that's just the easiest way for me to put it. Yeah.
Hope so. Hope there's people out there that feel that way. I mean, we have a lot of participants, and you know, they all. I know I'm just reiterating myself, but they're they all have something common, and they want answers, right? And they're getting that. You can wake up from that dream and go look at your device. I had somebody actually um, reached out to me the other day that they put their portal on at 1 in the morning and they noticed something funky. And they'll say, do you see that too? Well, we're going to see what you see. Okay. Pretty much. If and again, this is more scientific, it's not really me, but if there's a real major spike in something, Jim will get an alert and then he can look into it. Um, he's reached out to people who he'll see major spikes and he'll just call that person and say, "Hey, how's it going?" And the person will say, "Good, but at 2 o'clock this morning, the strangest thing happened." And I'll say, "Yeah, go look at your portal," and there it is. So that's happened several times. Um, so it's something visible. People need that visual to know that it's real, right?
Hmm. Definitely. And when you know it's real too, you can actually go to your friends and stuff that you haven't been able to talk to and say, well, hey, look at this. This correlates with my experience, and this other one correlates with that experience. And it's not like you're just, or not you, but someone who's just out there like saying things. There's real data. It's like taking a photo, but of it's a scientific like analysis photo. It's not that. Oh, you can attach photos to the device too, which is pretty cool.
Yes. And
And video
shortly,
cameras and
there'll be a better way to upload videos as well.
yeah.
So we're working, Jim's trying to perfect that.
That's so cool. Um, where do you see yourself in the future with the movie? I know that maybe now we're going a little bit too far. We're speculating a little bit, but like, where do you see yourself and where do you see the MUPAS going? Let's just say in the next, we're gonna go like 1 year, 5 years, 10 years. So like, where do you
Okay.
see it in the next year? Like, how many participants do we have now? Um,
We have several hundred,
right.
and our goal by the end of September was to reach a specific number that we'll reach. Where do I see myself? I guess sitting here in this chair with normally Jim behind me. Still working on this. And 5 years, I don't know, Alexi. I don't know. I don't
It's tough.
know.
Maybe all the answers will be answered by then, but
Yeah, I don't know. I think that this is going to get bigger. And not just because of the device. I think because more people are coming forward. And
yeah.
it is that person that was told as a child, this didn't happen, you never saw it, it's not real, you never talk about it. But it's that person now that is opening up. So I think if that is happening more and more. So the more people talk about it, of course, there's going to be opposition, right? There's going to be the people that are like, no, not real, not true. It's all made up.
Yeah, I
You're
mean,
always
people
going
say
to have
that
that.
about space. They still say that about space. Space is fake. So
Yes.
you can't always win. Yeah,
So, but I think it is that person who's been told their whole life to not talk about it is starting to realize it's okay. It's all right. Somebody just needed to tell them it was okay to talk about it.
it's
So,
really interesting.
yeah.
I'm thinking.
Oh,
No, that is cool. I mean, it is okay to talk about it, right? Like, I guess I personally still don't bring it up, just casual conversation, unless there's some reason to bring it up. Like when I go out with my friends or when I'm at work, I am lucky enough I can actually speak about this at work without getting in trouble. I tell my friends like I gotta go doing a UFO podcast later today. They're like, "Oh, really?" I'm like, "Yeah, it's a pretty real thing." But I also had like you said, it becomes more real the more people that are in your life that are involved with it. Because if it was just me saying, yeah, I'm gonna go do my UFO stuff, and then I went up into my bedroom and just worked alone on UFO stuff, that's kind of weird. But if you go and you work with a team or you're interacting with other people on this, it's like, okay, you guys are actually working towards something. Um, it, I don't know. I think it's really funny.
Yeah.
So
And,
I'm lucky enough to be in an environment where I can speak about these things. Yeah.
and the young generation, I'm talking children, um, they're excited about it, right? What little child doesn't draw pictures that, they're going to go to the moon and see an alien? And now that there's more about this, and we have friends who have children and grandchildren, these children want to, talk to Jim and pick his brain. And it's really cool. And even our own grandchildren, I mean, they're young, but is there really aliens? And we're like, well, could be, So I think for younger children, the more that they're now hearing, that stigma might go away a little bit, that this isn't something you can talk about. This is something you can talk about. And I
Well,
think
what's interesting?
a lot of the TV
Go ahead,
shows,
sorry.
yeah, I'm sorry. A lot of the shows that are on now, you know, I think because of that too, some people think it's all garbage and it's just reality BS. But for the people who really believe in them, they're watching them as a family. So I think a whole different door is opening up for this newer generation of people that can talk about it.
And so much of our foundation, the way we think in general as humans, gets somewhat programmed or ingrained into our minds at that young age, right? Between the ages of 2 to 6 or 3 to 6 is like where the most learning occurs. And so if you've been taught to put those blinders on and ignore your intuition, um, and that's kind of like a big deal. If you've learned to ignore your intuition, how much harder is life going to be than if you can actually follow your intuition or trust or learn to work with your intuition instead?
Mhm.
Um, yeah. So I do think that's extremely important. Like the young generations now growing up, it's like I'm not very good on this. I mean, I am good on computers and I am good on like technology, but my nephews, they were born with the iPad already existed, you
And
know?
yeah, yes, yes.
So,
They don't know any different.
right. So translate that
Button.
thinking of being able to work an iPad versus like knowing already, yeah, these things are real. Sometimes they pop in. They might mess with your emotions a little bit kind of thing sometimes, or have different effects. And so when people really know that, they can start to look like when, say, all of a sudden out of nowhere become really upset or angry and there's really no reason, you can start to think, well, what triggered that? And you
Mhm.
might have a more of a self-reflection. Um,
Sure.
and so what does that do to a society in the long term? I don't know. Do people become more understanding of each other? I might be making too many leaps here, but that's the way I see it.
Yeah. Unfortunately and sadly, there's so much bad in this world that I don't know if it does good. I don't know. There's a lot of great people out there, but there's a lot of just sad things that happen daily. So I hope it's not the phenomena saying you got to do this because we don't want
No.
that.
And that's where ultimately you are in charge of your own actions. Every individual is in charge of their own actions, and it's their duty to stay on track. In my that's where I stick with it. So who cares? Like, and that's where I think people also might be mistakenly for some reason put the phenomenon above the human. Um, no, the humans are awesome. We're amazing. Like you don't need to listen to everything. Like if a cat's meowing at the door because it wants to go out, but it's a thunderstorm, you don't need to let the cat out.
Right.
So if like some type of non-human intelligence is doing something, you don't need to listen to it. Tell it to go away. Like,
Yeah. It's
um,
there for a reason, right?
yeah,
You just
it's
have to figure out what that reason is. You might not know
right,
it. You know why the cat's meowing, they want to go out, but you
right,
might not really understand what the phenomena wants. And does it want it from you or for you? I think is a
right.
deep
And
question.
or is it for
I can't,
itself, right?
right. I can't answer that. I don't know that. But I'm sure a lot of people question that, what does it want from me? Don't think of it that way. Maybe it wants something for you. I don't
I
know.
remember when I was really doing a lot of my work, originally starting my company, I was doing a lot of like basically every time I woke up with a dream, I was fulfilling it. And it gets to a point though, well, not every time, not every single thing, and that's my point. It was me, someone saying, "No, you're not understanding how people work or how society is working. You can't do things like that and expect to have good results in the future." Right? It wasn't like anything negative or like malicious, but it's like, no, you can't, you don't, that's not how things are done. You're not understanding the human culture when you suggest things like that. So again, just understand where you come from and uh, always consider other people. But I know we're getting a little off topic here. Uh, little background. Barbara and I met in Vernal, Utah at the Blind Frog Ranch UFO conference, correct?
Yeah, symposium, conference.
Symposium conference. Yeah, and basically I was out there because I had been working with Chris Lato on launching the UAP Society, and so I designed his weather balloon, the one in the United States and also the one in Germany that launched at the same time. And basically, are you familiar with, you know what's funny? I actually still have one of these left. This was, people might think this is hilarious, but this is called balloon time.
Hmm.
Right? And there was a helium shortage during the time when we did the launch. And basically, I had to make sure we had helium for this weather balloon launch. And so I bought 40 of these
Hmm.
from a Walmart, threw them in the back of my truck, and then drove from Tampa all the way to Vernal, Utah with 40 helium tanks in the back of my truck and like made like a special fitting and stuff. And so that was the first time I ever really got introduced to Dr. Jim Segala as well. I remember meeting him sitting at the table and he's like tinkering with this electronic device. I had no idea what it was. And it ends up being the MUPAS that went into the weather balloon that we launched into space.
That was the
Um,
original one. So that was the tall. Um, it was
it was the tall device, but
it's
it wasn't
narrow
inside the
quality.
cylinder. It was just the chip from it.
Yes, yes, because that was housed in the cylinder, but then he redesigned it into the unit that you have, which is the desktop model. It's small,
Yep.
it's compact, and the display is 1,000 times better. That's something scientific that I know about the device.
I was surprised. I didn't think we were going into science, but
We're
that's
not
more design and engineering. I'm just gonna be real with you,
okay.
But
We're not going there. But yes, so yes, that's where we met at the balloon. Yes.
yeah. So okay, so we launched the balloon, and what's really interesting too is out of nowhere, I'm on stage now with Jim and Chris Lato, and we're talking about the experiment, the UAP Society. I wasn't expecting to go on stage, so if anyone watches that video from a while back, that was impromptu. I wasn't expecting to go on stage. But after the event, I believe everything was somewhat closing up, and I was kind of standing. I think you have a more vivid memory of us
I
meeting.
do. It's just this strange thing that I have about meeting people and remembering where I was. Sometimes it's even what I was wearing. I mean, it just. But we were in the lobby of, we were about to leave, and you had a table, I think, with your books,
Hmm.
and you stopped Jim and you wanted to give him a book. And that's the day I met you, or we both met you. Well, he had already met you, but that was the first time I met you. Um, we were heading out. We were some people that were friends of somebody's was giving us a ride back to Salt Lake City that night. So we had to, get going. But yeah, that's the night or late afternoon after the symposium that you and I met.
But then we
So
didn't reconnect until maybe what was it? Maybe 4 years. Like we started working. I became more involved in working with you. What, like a year and a half ago now, or 2 years ago?
probably about that, yeah.
It's been longer than I thought. Time's been flying.
Oh,
Um, but I remember the book I gave. Now that you mentioned that, it was The Fifth Dimension.
okay.
Yeah. And that talks about like how consciousness interacts with different fields of information and how we can like design interdimensional technologies and whatnot. But no, it's really, really fascinating because I never, um, I guess I never really expected to be so involved with UAP at this time, but also in the same way, maybe I did. I'm not really sure. Um, but I remember, hmm, well, a cool thing about that event was I met Travis Taylor there too, but he just very quickly gave me a compliment. He was like, "You were the only person that could have gone and picked up that balloon the way you did." I mean, we launched it from Vernal, Utah, and then it landed in Dinosaur National Monument, like in Colorado. And so it was over 5 hours drive, like 2 hours on a dune buggy, hike up the mountain. Yeah, it was such a fun trip.
It was so, for me, it was really cool, you know. There were just so many known names that I had heard over the years and just got to meet some fascinating people. It was, for me, it was just a wonderful experience. I wasn't quite, didn't know it'd be so hot in Utah. We were there. Definitely not dressed for the occasion, but that was okay. I
Well,
just,
where I collected the balloon,
hot.
it was snowing.
Oh,
We we had to run from a snowstorm.
oh.
Um, but what I found really interesting, and this is something you mentioned earlier, and I wanted to circle back to it. So the very first time someone ever asked you if you believe or in extraterrestrials or non-human intelligence or something like that was Dr. Hal Puthoff being like, "So what do you think?" or "What do you believe in this?" That was really the very first time.
Well, I don't think he phrased it like that. It was just one of those course of events that we were supposed to get to Austin much earlier in the day. We had an early morning flight out of Boston, and of course, there was a snowstorm. They clear the runway. Then there was an ice storm. We had to get de-ice. We're stuck out on the runway, and it was just one, just seemed like disaster after another of trying to get this plane in the air. And finally, you know, we take off and we get into Austin just hours late. And Hal and his wonderful wife were just so great about it. Okay, you get here when you get here, you know. But by the time we got there, it was really late. So we just all kind of went out to dinner. And we're just sitting in this restaurant, just chatting and getting to know one another. And it just, you know, our thoughts about what is real and what isn't real kind of came up. Um, but yes, so it was that night at dinner was the first time I ever had a real conversation about it. And then the next day got to see the lab and I was like fascinated. Like people really look into this? Like this is real.
What kind
So
of okay, so I know you were doing you grew the yeast so Jim could see how the cells were communicating. What other type of experiments that you're allowed to talk about? I don't know if you can talk about everything. What other types of experiments were going on in that lab?
so that was probably after he had been in Texas, I don't know, maybe a year, who knows? I don't even know. Um, that was the only hands-on real science activity, scientific study that I was involved in. And I just kind of took over, you know, talking to my yeast, just growing the
Well,
yeast.
I guess I'm more curious of the outline. I was trying to get
Oh,
insight into the lab itself. Were there
I didn't
vials
do that.
everywhere? Like,
No, I did that where we were staying, actually. I didn't do it at the lab. Um, no, I mean, you know, I didn't really go to the office often, but um, It was it was great. I enjoyed it and I learned from it. You know, we're never ever should stop learning, right? We're never
hmm.
old to learn. So that was my first hands-on. So yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. And so yeah, I'm trying to remember this. You said you went to an expo one time and there was an actor. It was like a famous actor, and you really wanted to see this
Oh,
actor.
yes.
Um, okay.
So that was a conversation you and I had had. Um, for anybody listening to this that was a LeVar Burton fan from Reading Rainbow, I thought he was wonderful. I didn't care about Star Trek and his role, but being an educator with my master's in reading, he had a program when my children were young. So we're going back to the 80s where it was called Reading Rainbow. And it was all early literacy. And it was a phenomenal show. So there was a conference in Houston, and Hal and Jim were going to this conference, and I wasn't going to go because when I was in Texas, I would have my dog with us. But somebody that worked in the office said they would, watch the dog so I could just go. So we take this ride and start looking at the schedule of events for the conference, and I see that the entire Star Trek panel was going to be speaking. And one of the main speakers was going to be LeVar Burton. And I thought, oh my God, he was just did so much in, again, early literacy. Wouldn't it just be so cool just to meet him? Just even being in the same room was cool, but to like talk to him. So it was like a little kid having an idol. And at one point we decide I'm gonna catch up to them to have lunch. We go to lunch and we're sitting, and after, I don't know at that point if we had ordered or not, two people come to sit behind us, and this person's chair smacks into my chair. Now, I could have, turned around and not been polite, or I could have just sat there and been polite, which I did. And then when it was time to leave, I kind of moved my chair out just, a little, just so I could, look at this person. And sure enough, it was LeVar Burton. I was like, oh my God, he bumped his chair against my chair, and I'm just sitting here. So Jim and Hal were like, you gotta go say hi. And I'm like, no, no, no. He's eating. This is his private time. He's talking to somebody. And then I'm like, okay, that's not me. I'm game. So I said, oh, excuse me, I said, I just have to tell you that I loved you on Reading Rainbow and your contribution you made to early literacy. And I don't think that this man ever thought this was coming because everybody knew him from Star Trek. And we just started talking, and we went out in the lobby and we just started taking tons of pictures together that I have. Um, and then I was so excited when we got back. Um, at that point, I think I was teaching 3 courses. I put on my courses, my picture with him, and started this whole big thing about early literacy. And it was just really cool. I mean, I would never have there's never really anybody I could say that I ever really wanted to meet, but he was just one person that I think made such a significant contribution. And it was just the coolest thing. It was just so cool. And there he was. Like, if we hadn't gone to eat, there's that effect that what you say, those circumstances. If we didn't
Right.
eat right when we did, or if we didn't sit at that table, I might not have ever have met him.
Or if your friend didn't watch your dog for you, right? Like,
Exactly. I would never have gone. So it was that snowball of effects that put us there at that moment. Fate. I believe in fate.
oh
So,
yeah, yeah.
you
Well,
know,
that's what from my personal experience, that's what I've come to see that's in my opinion, just that's how the phenomenon basically works. It creates a series of synchronicities that has an ultimate outcome. Um, what that outcome is, I don't know. It's different for everyone because everyone has different lives, different experiences, but there's a breaking of a routine that leads to a series of synchronicities. And you know what's really interesting is Gary Nolan the other day on the Vinny Adams podcast was asked by Vinny. Vinny asked him, "What would be your best hypothesis or way to test consciousness or the power of the human consciousness?" And his answer was along the lines of if they're able to create a series of synchronicities that leads to a result, which I just find very fascinating because that does seem to really tie into this whole thing. Um, so that's just really cool. Are there any closing remarks you'd like to make today about this, or
no, again, I thank you. You made this easy.
well, I
And
try. Next
Um,
time it's all science. We're doing a science
no,
test.
never, never, never. I'm
I'm
not the
just kidding.
science person. Nope. No, I thank you. And I hope that people will walk away from hearing this knowing that I think Jim and I, our common goal is for people to know that we're not some fly by night people that want you to sign up for something. That's not what we're about. We're about letting people know that there is something out there that can give them hands-on live data,
Mhm.
and that we're honest, right?
Well, and also established before all the hype began. Like you say, the 2018 hype or the 2017 hype. You guys, Jim had already been working on this before that. It's something like just like I have, and now you have a lot of people that are coming in. I don't like using the word grifter, but people that come in and make sensationalist claims. Yeah, they're YouTube. They get a lot of YouTube views and things like that, but are they really helping the movement when they're just making stuff up and just talking about balloons in the sky? I don't know.
So that's
Um,
where the word honest for me comes in. I
yeah,
think people have to know, if you email me and I can't help you, I'm going to be honest. And I say, I'm sorry, I can't help you, but maybe this person can. I
yeah,
recently sent somebody to you, right?
yep,
That I read that email. I said to Jim, what do you think? He says, that's Alexi. And
yeah,
it wasn't even a hesitation. Of course, I asked that person's permission first.
yes.
Oh, I asked you, and then I asked them if, I could forward their email on to you. Um, I
I'm
want,
still working on it.
okay, that's okay.
Yeah.
I think that for us, it's all about honesty and being trustworthy, and that we're sincere, and that this is a topic that's not going to go away. And I think we're both now in it pretty much full force. So that's it.
Give me 3 more months and I will be double full force. I'm almost finished with my current project that's taking up most of my time.
And I
But
think
that,
Jim is still might be in between with something with that. So, um,
yeah.
but no, this is good. Thank you, Alexi. I
No,
appreciate it.
thank you. And
And your
thank you so much for,
enthusiasm to, just be out there and just talk to people and let people know that you're also approachable. So,
yeah.
thank you.
No, thank you. I appreciate that.